expect, and that is what Africa expects of its democratically elected leaders. It was clearly stated over and over again that sitting heads of state and other senior state officials are granted immunities during their tenure of office. That has always been and remains the practice today, even as we speak and stand here. Africa was unequivocal about its commitment to fight impunity, to promote human rights, the rule of law, good governance, and democracy on our continent, and this they would do in accordance with the Constitutive Act of the Union. It is there in the Charter of our Union. The continent confirmed its intention to ensure that the Rome Statute, which the majority of its members are party to, is modified by the Assembly of State Parties beginning this November to respond to the aspirations of its largest constituency for a proper court of last resort of the highest possible standards and standing. Accordingly, and to ensure that the continent rises to its responsibilities and addresses the concerns of its people, the Commission was mandated to urgently pursue the expansion of the mandates of the African Court of Human and People's Rights to deal with crimes that fall in the category of international crimes. Specifically, and in addition, you will be aware that the summit decided that no charges shall be commenced or continued before any international court or tribunal against any serving head of state or government or anybody acting or entitled to act in such capacity during his or her term in office. It agreed that to safeguard the constitutional order, the stability, the integrity of member states, that no serving AU head of state or government or anybody acting or entitled to act in such capacity shall be required to appear before any international court or tribunal during their term of office. That accordingly, the trials of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto be suspended until they complete their terms of office. The summit requested the ICC to postpone the trial of His Excellency President Kenyatta and suspend proceedings against Deputy President Ruto until such a time as the United Nations Security Council pronounces itself on Kenya's request for a deferral. It decided that President Kenyatta will not appear before the ICC until such a time as the concerns raised by the African Union and its member states have adequately been addressed by the Security Council and the ICC. So what does this specifically mean for us and for His Excellency the President and the Deputy President? Let me make the following points. First, Kenya has from the beginning fully, totally, and completely cooperated with the ICC and conformed to the Rome Statute without ever deviating from its obligations. Both His Excellency the President and the Deputy President have continuously and without fail attended court sessions and argued their cases fully. Second, as you know, our Deputy President is currently at The Hague to ensure that even as we await for the processing of Africa's request for a deferral, due process is not in any way adversely affected. Clear decisions were made by the AU with clear timelines, and we are all hopeful that as responsible members of the international community, Africa's requests will be positively considered. Third, the President's case is due to start on the 12th of November this year. That's in about a month's time. The AU has made requests to the Security Council, first under paragraph 9 of the decision that they took, for a suspension of the proceedings until the end of terms of the office of the president and his deputy. The AU has asked that the trial of the president and the proceedings against the deputy president be suspended until such time that the Security Council considers the request for deferral. It was also decided that the president should not appear before the court until the concerns raised by the AU have been adequately addressed by the Security Council and the ICC. Dear gentlemen and ladies of the press, I will tell you that as Kenya and as representatives of the country, we are extremely proud to have been in Addis Ababa at this moment in the Commission's history. We are proud because the whole continent came together to address an issue that the continent felt was of continental proportions and, of course, of continental interest and concern. And we are very, very pleased that at the end of the 2 days, we came out not with ambiguous decisions, not with vague promises, but with clear decisions and clear timelines. Of that, we're extremely grateful to the continent and to our brothers and sisters that helped to ensure that these decisions were made and were agreed to unanimously by the Assembly of Heads of State and Government. I will take a few questions, if you have any, but I'd like to start by saying thank you very much for having come, and I again apologize for coming in late. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ken Mijungo. I work for NTV. I have two questions, if you will, tafadhali. The first question is, in the run-up to the election, the president made it very clear these are personal challenges, and he would wish to address the nation on personal challenges, and he'll take them. So when did his personal challenges turn into an AU affair, that it has to go to the AU? And related with that, last week when you stood here, you said that you did not call for the convening of the special session to discuss to discuss ICC. But this formed the bulk of the agenda. So I want also to know, in the face of this, now that Kenya did not call for that session, can Kenya effectively ignore the AU and proceed with this case at The Hague? And then finally, the Telegraph today had a story indicating that Western diplomats had indicated that they are writing to the UN National Security Council for a deferral of the same. Who are these? Who were they referring to? Who are these diplomats? Thank you.
Okay, let me begin with the first question. And the president was right when he said, as he campaigned for elections, that at that time, those were personal problems. He was not elected then into office. He was campaigning for office. The minute that he was elected into office, they stopped being personal problems. They first became national problems and eventually regional problems. And that is true of any sitting head of state on the continent and beyond. Last week when we were here together, I told you also, and I challenged you to give me the name of one sitting president that had ever been prosecuted during his term of office. And I would still challenge you to do that. Because the moment that you cross the threshold from being a candidate for elections to being the duly elected president of the republic, everything changes. Everything changes. We were together, all of us, I think, at Bombers when the president drove in his personal car, and after he was given his certificate, all of a sudden everything changed. You saw the security around him, you saw that he got into official vehicles immediately. Everything changed. And I think anybody who had eyes, should have seen that, right? So that's the first question. Did we call for the meeting? We are part of the African Union. When a meeting is called, we attend the meeting. And we had agreed, even before that, right, at a meeting of foreign ministers in New York, that this meeting would look at the election of the Commissioner for Peace and Security, as well as issues of interest to us, and one of the issues that was of most interest to the continent was the issue of its relationship, the continent's relationship with the ICC. So obviously it formed the bulk of the discussions, but it wasn't the only issue in the discussion. We discussed Lampedusa, for instance, and the many Africans that lost their lives in sea. We discussed issues that related to the Westgate attack. We discussed issues that relate to integration. We elected a new commissioner for peace and security for the continent. So that was not the only issue that was on the table, but yes, it took most of the time of the summit because of its urgency, but also because of its importance. And are we going to ignore the decision? How can we? How can we? We are part and parcel of the AU and have been since 1963. Any decisions that are made there, we were part of the decision-making process. We have signed onto all the decisions that were made. We must implement them, as must all the African countries that were present, right? And I told you that they were not all the countries present, because as you know, some of them have been suspended, including those that have issues, internal issues, which we all hope will be resolved very, very quickly so that they can join our community of African countries. On the Telegraph, you know, I saw the news item the same way, my brother, that you saw it. So I need to find out who these diplomats are, but I can tell you one thing for sure, that we are comforted by that reaction, because for a long time, we have been hoping that we'll get that kind of reaction. And we are pleased that the reaction has been positive to the requests by the African Union for a deferral of the cases.
Mine is a follow-up. I'm sorry, my name is Amina Mohamed. I work for Easy and QFM. Mine is a follow-up to Ken Mijungo's question. If the UN Security or the Security Council fails to address issues raised by the AU, I want a straightforward question. Is President Uhuru Kenyatta going to attend the trial at The Hague, yes or no? Just a straightforward. Can you state categorically that the president won't attend the proceedings? Seriously, you can't do that. You can't expect me to predict things that are happening in the future. I told you this before. I'm sorry. Seriously, I can't answer that question. The Security Council, hasn't been approached. The paperwork is being processed. When the paperwork is ready, it will go to the Security Council. I respect this council. I want the council to take its time and consider this request without predetermining what the outcome of their consultations are going to be. So let's just give them the space, to make that decision. And after they've made the decision, I think all of us will be made aware. With all due respect, Madam, I want to get it clear. By you saying that you will implement the AU resolutions, what do you mean?
Well, I've read them out. I've read them out. We're asking for a deferral of the Security Council, by the Security Council of the cases, right? And we, as that request goes forward and is being processed, we hope that the Security Council and the ICC will postpone the cases, also to allow the Security Council to give this due consideration. So that's what I mean. You have to allow the Security Council to, first of all, receive the requests from us and from the AU, okay, in accordance with Article 16 of the statute. And after that, to actually sit as a Security Council, because the letters go to the President of the Security Council, sit as a Security Council and make that decision. And I tell you that as soon as they've made that decision, I will definitely not have to come here. You'll hear about it immediately. But we are actually pleased that there are already reactions that we are receiving that are not negative at all.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Hunja Mashaya from KBC, and I have one question. I've heard you talk about suspending the case against Kenyatta and Ruto. Yet we have another suspect, that is Joshua Arap Sang. What is his fate?
You know, the African Union in a summit cannot discuss a case that's before the court that does not touch on a sitting president or a senior state official. And therefore, obviously, in the decisions that were made by the AU, which is what we are actually addressing today, the name of Sang did not come up. Because in that case, just as was the case with the president and the deputy president before they were elected into office, right, that case is personal. And until that situation changes, it will be considered personal, and it cannot be the subject of discussion at the African Union.
Geoffrey Mosoku from The Standard. I want to make a follow-up of what Mishungu asked. Now that the president told us during the campaigns that the cases were personal, challenge to him, and all of a sudden they have turned international after he became president. We know that the Constitution of Kenya gives him immunity against any proceedings in a court of law, except for a case which is of international nature. I want to know, AU and Kenya is relying on which law or which statute to advance its case at the UN?
First of all, like I said before, and you know, the question that has been asked about Sang is actually very relevant in this case. Until you're elected into office, it's personal. As soon as you're elected into office, it actually stops being personal. If it was personal, it would never have made it to the agenda of the African Union Summit. I think that's clear. It would never have made it. It made it to the agenda of the AU because he's a sitting head of state. Okay? So basically, and you know, on the issue of the law, Article 16 of the statute, it allows us a deferral. Again, last week when we were here, I told you, we signed on to the whole statute. We did not sign on to parts of the statute or certain provisions of the statute. We signed on to the whole statute. And therefore, we can invoke any part of that statute. Any part. And please go and read the statute, and you'll see it contains deferment, it contains referrals, it contains withdrawals from the statute itself. So it has all that. We signed onto a statute. We did not sign onto parts of that statute. And that statute has all those provisions, relevant ones, the ones that you've just referred to defer the case. And it also clearly states who should be approached to defer these cases. So, I mean, there is no ambiguity, I think. The law is clear, and the African Union has made it clear that it's fighting impunity and it's a promotion of democracy and rule of law is absolute. It's absolute. And that's why it can only fall back on the statute that exists now to ask for a deferral. The AU has made a decision. Look at the decision. It's very, very clear. It tells you who's going to ask for the deferral, which is endorsed by the whole union, right? And it's going to be presented to the Security Council jointly by the African Union and by the government of Kenya. So it's quite clear. Any other questions? Thank you very, very much.
Yes, one more question, please.
Just one more?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Freni, and my question is concerning this huge concern about the African heads of state only seem to discuss what concerns them as individuals, and they seem to be ignoring...
They're not individuals. They're heads of state. I'm sorry.
Well, but they seem to be a very big concern.
No, the heads of state, we should begin from there. The heads of state,
yes,
and they're concerned about issues that are of concern to the peoples of the continent. They were elected by these peoples.
Yes.
These people trust them to carry their agendas forward.
Exactly, but there seem to be other core issues that are affecting the people of
Well, why don't you
Africa.
put them on the table? Put them on the table. They discuss economic development, they discuss economic growth, they discuss health issues, they discuss education, they discuss technology, they discuss everything. So put the issues that are of concern to you on the table as well, and we as a country will take them forward to the AU.
Is that the issues affecting the citizens seem to be taking a lower
That's
level.
not true. That's not true. This was an extraordinary session. I'm sorry. We have ordinary sessions every year. And at those ordinary sessions, the ICC doesn't come up, except in passing. We discuss mostly issues that are of concern to our countries and our people. So that's not even accurate.
I'm Mural from Capital FM. I have this question. What about the fate of victims of post-election violence? Now that we are just talking about, you know, the head of state and his deputy, what is about
we discussed the victims as well. We discussed the victims, right? We were asked what we had done for the victims. We informed what we had done, right, in terms of closing of the IDP camps, in terms of even engaging with the lawyer for the victims. And for your information, the lawyer for the victims who's sitting in The Hague actually supported some of the requests that the government made to the court. Although the court did not listen, but the lawyers for the victims actually supported some of our requests. And therefore, we are in touch with the lawyers. We will do everything. Obviously, maybe we won't be able to do them overnight, but we will do everything to address issues of concern to the victims and to those people that were displaced. We've made sure that some of them are resettled. We will make sure that everything is done to ensure that they do not suffer, continue to suffer as a result of the post-election violence that happened in 2007-2008. Okay, that's the last one. I can't hear you.
Sorry. My name is Josh Crone. I'm a reporter with the New York Times. I just had a quick two-part. I wanted to rephrase one of the previous questions.
No, don't rephrase. Just ask your questions.
Okay.
I've answered all the other questions. I'm sorry.
All right, no problem.
Just ask your question, ask one question, and that will be the end of the interview.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If the UN Security Council and or the ICC does indeed respond before November 12th, but they say that His Excellency President Kenyatta must attend, is the President prepared to possibly attend?
Seriously, you can't expect me to predict that.
No, I'm
we
saying,
actually have to respect the processes that are in place. We are preparing the documentation again. This documentation will be presented to the Security Council, all 15 members. They will sit and consider our request, look at the evidence and the information we are providing to them, and decide whether they will accept the request or not. At that point, all other decisions will be made. But right now, I think it's just premature
so no decisions have been made yet.
It's presumptuous to start assuming anything else. And again, I would actually urge all of you, copies of the decisions are on the net. Just go ahead and get a copy. You'll find that most of those questions have been answered already. At the AU Summit, everything was taken into consideration, everything was discussed, and I think we have a decision that is complete. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Approximately.